Hey guys, Biscuit with another video. So today we have the Q&A. So if you didn't know, a couple of videos ago, or like 2 videos ago, I asked people for questions because I was going to do a Q&A. So anyway, here is it. Don't feel bad if I don't get to your question. There was a ton of submissions. Like, just look at this number.
Oh, look at the top of his head.
Yeah, so I got a lot of comments and submissions. Now, what I'll be doing is I'll be reading the top most liked ones all the way down to the least liked ones. So I'll probably be answering like 25 to 50 of these questions, not 183. That would be like a 20-minute video. But anyway, let's get into it. So our first question comes from Mal Pregeno, and his question is, what is the hardest thing to code in the One Night at Puffys Crab Shack series so far? I'm gonna be honest, there was a ton of hard things to code in Puffys Crab Shack. A lot of them mainly happened in like the previous iterations that I never shared simply because of those bugs. But I definitely say one of the big issues was the scrolling when I first tried to figure that out. Objects essentially wouldn't stay in their place and would just go to the side of the screen, and I could not fix that for the life of me. That was extremely hard and annoying, and I most of the time eventually just gave up. More things that happened that were annoying, I guess, would be like animatronic movement and them kind of like not working as intended. Like, I've also had other stuff where there's a bug, but you can't possibly fix it unless you restart Scratch, and there's nothing you can do, and it's not even my fault. And I just restart Scratch and it fixes. But I did spend like a really long time trying to fix those bugs, only to realize that like Scratch is the one causing them. So anyway, I would say scrolling, Scratch bugs, and like animatronic bugs would definitely be the hardest I've faced so far. Now the next question we have by Mari TV is, first on my question, when is One Night at Puffys Crab Shack 2 coming out? This had 7 likes, so a lot of people want me to answer this. Sadly, I don't think until 2021 or late 2020, and that's for a lot of reasons. First of all, I have a ton of other games coming out that, yes, they apply to the lore, so, yeah, stay tuned for that. Like, 3 Nights of Stories is gonna come out, too. That's gonna have a lot to do with the lore. Puffys Crab Shack Ladyiggy also is gonna have a lot to do with the lore, and One Night at Toad's. So there's gonna be 3 games coming out. I'm also planning to do a remake of Puffys Crab Shack opening, since I know I could do a lot better than I did. Puffys Crab Shack 2, though, is going to be a completely different style than FNAF, and it's going to take a lot to learn because I'm going to learn a new engine to make it Game Maker Studio. So it's going to take a while, but it's definitely not cancelled. It's definitely coming out. I definitely have a story planned out for it, too. But don't ask me questions about the story because I'm not going to answer them. But I've definitely figured out the gist of the Puffys Crab Shack story. So to answer your question, late 2020 to 2021. Now, our next question comes from Screaming Game Dev. It's, how did you get into coding, and what's your favorite FNAF fan game, any platform? So I'm gonna answer both. So to get into it, how did I get into coding? Well, I mean, I've been playing video games for like as long as I can remember, since I got my first iPad. My first game that I really liked was Minecraft. That game is really nostalgic for me to play. But I got into games after one of my friends showed me Five Nights at Freddy's. Like, I got into Five Nights at Freddy's after this. And I always thought about making my fan game after I realized that there was a huge community. So I began thinking in my mind for a while, and the plans didn't turn into anything. I even built the map in Minecraft. I might show you that one day. But yeah, I would say that I got into coding because I realized that there was a big community. Of course, I found out Scratch after lots of internet searching, and I used lots of tutorials. So, the second question, my favorite FNAF fan game on any platform, I don't know what it would be, honestly. Might be something like The Joy of Creation, or like Jollibees, or no, it's it's Five Nights at Candy's remake, yeah. Five Nights at Candy's remake is definitely my favorite. That is a really good game. Go play it if you haven't. It's on Game Jolt. It's really good. It's just It was one of the first big FNAF fan games, actually, so go play it if you haven't. Okay, so the next question comes from Iffy, and he asked, what is the development process that you go through while making a game? Like, for example, do you do a lot of work at the beginning and not so much in the middle, or are you consistently working on the game? Now, what I would say is that when I start a game, I definitely work on it a lot more than the end. It kind of goes from me working on it a lot, and then it kind of becomes slowly more, like, less interesting to work on. But then usually when I set a release date for the game, I get back to grinding. So it kind of comes from, like, I don't know, grinding really hard to not really to then grinding again really hard. Essentially, but the development process is essentially I make it from start to finish. So I do a lot of planning in my head and kind of some sketches and stuff for the idea. Then I kind of make the game from start to finish and kind of point A to point B, stuff like that. So I would definitely say that the development process is interesting, is all I'd say. Our next question comes from Azul Arts, and his question is, if Scratch never existed, what other coding language would have you learned quickly? If I'm gonna be honest, probably something like Roblox Studio or Game Maker Studio, because those are, from what I've heard, fairly easy. I have done some work in Roblox Studio, and it is pretty... It's not hard since there's a lot of free model stuff, but free models aren't really the best thing to use. But yeah, it would either be Roblox Studio or Game Maker Studio. Okay, the next one comes from Brady Higgy. So he has a few. Why do you prefer Mac? I've noticed you use iMovie over PCs, and what kind of setup do you have over it? When did you start Scratch, and do you have any plans on learning a new engine? So to start your first question, I don't prefer Mac. It's just the only computer that I have available currently, because I don't have enough money to buy a new one. And I use iMovie because that's one of the only editors I can use. And I started Scratch a while ago, like I think 2016, end of 2016. And do I have any plans on doing a new engine? Yes, Game Maker Studio I have plans to use a lot now, so that would be the new engine I would be moving to. Next question comes from Rainy's meme channel. I probably didn't say that right. How long does it take to make a Five Nights at Freddy's game on Scratch? How many days or hours? So, it's actually taken me a wide variety of times. Like, I made No Place to Run in 2.5 hours, but with all the updates, it was probably 3.5 hours. So, at the end of the day, literally less than, like, a day of work, I guess. But for, like, other games, like, I would say 2 months or something like that. Like, the longest one I've had is a year. 2 years, but that was because I took a 6-month break from it. So, yeah, that was Puffys Crab Shack opening. But yeah, I'd say anywhere from 3.5 hours to 2 months would probably be the average thing. If you want to put a lot of effort into the game, 2 months. If you don't, that would probably be 3.5 hours. So anyway, that's the answer. This next question comes from Ibrahim Malik. How did you get the idea for multiplayer, and what do you think of a Puffys Crab Shack free roam? So for the idea of multiplayer, it mainly came from me wanting to do one big kind of cool update to One Night at Puffys Crab Shack Fan Edition. And I kind of contacted some people that I know and just asked, what should I do for this update? One guy had the idea for multiplayer, and he actually made me a pretty good multiplayer engine for it, so I used that. Credit to Star Wars Lover. Would I be considering a One Night at Puffys Crab Shack free roam? I don't particularly like free roam, like FNAF games. I don't know why, I just don't particularly like them. So probably not, and I definitely couldn't make it in Scratch, because that is not really good for 3D. This next question comes from Crunchy Cashew, and they asked, were you inspired by someone to start coding? Honestly, not really. It was mainly inspired by the games themselves, not really the people, like Scott Cawthon, Minecraft, all that other stuff. So yeah, to answer your question, it wasn't really people, it was games. This next question comes from Rafi's Wonderful World, and his question is, how does it feel to have a really famous fan game and having this success? It's weird, and I wouldn't necessarily consider it extremely famous, because there's fan games like Five Nights at Candy's that have gotten thousands and hundreds of thousands of views and stuff like that. So, but it is... I didn't think I would get this big, so it is pretty cool, and I thank you guys for doing this. But yeah, I would just say it's interesting feeling. It's hard to describe. This next question comes from Topop31, and his question is, do you want to be a programmer in the future? If not, what would your job be? So, yes, I do want to be a programmer in the future, of course. Like, I want to get, like, a full-time job. I don't care. It is something to do with programming. And, yeah, I wouldn't really, if I did have to pick a different job, I don't know what it would be, honestly. Like, I know there's a lot of businesses around me that I could work at and stuff like that, like, for a job, like an early job, but for my, like, main job, probably a programmer, definitely. This is a pretty good question, so it's come from SMJTV. How did you get the name Biscuit OGG? This is a I don't know, embarrassing story. So when I was really young, I watched this guy named Donut the Dog who did Minecraft stuff. Like, I think I watched him, like, twice. And I was thinking of channel names, and this is, like, when I was really young, and I was just like, oh, I'm gonna do a parody on this Biscuit Dog. My channel and his are completely unrelated, though. Like, they're not similar at all, so, yeah, that's kind of how I got the name. This next question is pretty good, and it's by Mar Plays, and their question is, how did you come up with the idea for Puffys Crab Shack? So, it kind of came up from me always wanting to make a FNAF fan game ever since I was introduced to it. But if you're wondering about characters and stuff, etc., it actually came from stuffies I owned that I won at, like, a carnival and stuff. So, yeah, those are kind of how I got the characters ready. I actually still have them to this day. If you want to see what they look like, just go to the One Night at Puffys Crab Shack behind the scenes project on my Scratch profile and you can see them. So yeah, that's kind of how I got the ideas for it. This next question comes from Dominic's Den of Horrors, and their question is, will you ever do a video trying to code a FNAF fan game on the Scratch Junior app? Scratch Junior is kinda bad in my opinion, and it's not really coding at all. Like, I technically wouldn't consider Scratch coding all that much, but, like, Scratch Junior, just no. No, I don't know. Just no.
Ah, look at the top of his head.
This next question comes from Jeffinator06, who actually made the Puffys Crab Shack Return series, and their question is, what is the toughest / most frustrating thing about Scratch? There's a lot, and that's why I won't be posting games on Scratch anymore, but one of the main things is Scratch promotes collaboration a lot between users, but they barely have any support for it. What I mean by this is that when you have to share, if you want to share a project between a user so they can take it and then use it to add on to the collab project, you have to share it publicly. You can't share it privately, which means everyone can see it, and by the time it's done, everyone's already seen it. And it also makes it say it's remixed by, which makes it seem not original. So there is just no support for it. Second reason, they hate FNAF games with a passion. Don't know why, don't know how. They just hate them a lot because they think most people using their site is an 8-year-old, which I don't think's true, but yeah. This next question comes from GlitchCoderYT, and their question is, did One Night at Puffys Crab Shack opening lore ever go through changes? Oh boy, it went through a lot of changes. It originally was set to take place in a different dimension that Ahmed was going to teleport you into. I took that out because that just didn't make sense, and I feel like it took less weight away from the story since that didn't really affect the real world. It also didn't just make logical sense, and I also went through a lot of minor changes along with that too. But yeah, in all, there was a ton of big changes to One Night at Puffys Crab Shack opening. This next question comes from Gotcha Dragon, and their question is, how hard is it to make a video? Now, this definitely differs. If it's just me simply playing a game, not that much, but if it's something like this in a Q&A, a decent amount of time. So it kind of ranges between how much editing, how much footage I have to collect, etc. Next question comes from Austin Fault, and their question is, what is the full One Night at Puffys Crab Shack lore? I'm not gonna say that right now, because there's a lot of it, like a lot of lore applying to it. Just play Puffys Crab Shack opening and these upcoming games. That's all I'm gonna say. I don't want to spoil it for people. This next question comes from Beakman, and their question is, you said you won Puffy at like a carnival. What game was it? So it was actually Whack-A-Mole. I won it at a game of Whack-A-Mole. Well, actually my dad played for me. Well, we both played, but my dad also played, but he actually ended up winning it in the end. So technically my dad won it for me. And it's weird thinking like how different my life would be if I actually never won Puffy. So yeah, it was at a game of Whack-A-Mole. This next question comes from Speed Train 2019, and they asked, "Are you making a plushie of Puffy?" I would love to have Puffys Crab Shack merch, but right now I just kind of want to grow my fan base a little bit more before doing that. But yeah, I would absolutely love to have like a Funko Pop figure, a vinyl, and also like plushies, t-shirts, etc. I'd love that, but I just want to grow my fan base just a little bit more. This last question comes from Kron673, and their question is, can you make a platformer game or you can't? I'm pretty sure I could. It's just my fan base is not into platformers, and same with me, so I'm not gonna make one, but I'm just gonna say something with Puffys Crab Shack validity might have something to do with it. Not gonna say anything, but it might. Anyway, that's the end of the video, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Sorry if your question didn't get answered, but anyway, guys, on that note, bye!